We have done a real party here.
Please. Absolutely. See you. See you, man. Good.
Well, part of it 3 different times.
We are all being recorded for posterity.
Yeah, okay. No YouTube now.
Now, is that Jeremy's camera?
What's next for you?
What's next for me is One World Lights. It's a global community of people who are personally engaged in changing the world, who are serving people in their own communities in all sorts of ways, dealing with health, dealing with food, dealing with housing, you name it. It's going on
And that you're going to stay domestic, or you're going to go
global.
I think we spoke at a...
It's good to kind of calibrate it. But a nice kid, very nice.
How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, and also this is, I think.
Yeah, it's in the end, I think we need some procedure with that. This is like, reunion here.
I know, it's probably tremendous amounts.
You're going to be certified in behavior.
We're going to get some first.
You're going to get outside. You're outside.
That's why I had to get
These are Indian festival. Okay, this is waffle. So it's sliding to all the sauces.
Yes.
well.
So, you know...
Oh, well,
It's all just act like we're... That's right. Well, we are. Yeah, the summit. Yeah, like in Water World or whatever the name of that place was.
I did work.
We're going to reach out to each other locally
It is a privilege and honor to host the HR Forums event tonight, REA. That the HR Forums has been an integral part in building a community of HR professionals in the Bay Area, and it will live on in terms of its legacy, in terms of the relationships that's been able to build through the years. So for that, thank you for building those relationships that will continue to grow and nurture themselves as all of us as HR professionals. What's important for us, if I think about what we do as a company, the metaphor around a network. A network is designed to connect people and move information. And that's what the HR Forums has done. It's created a network of individuals. It's moved information as a way to increase our thought leadership, our ability to add value to the businesses that we support, and it has been an integral part in terms of my own personal development as an HR professional. So for that, I'm extremely grateful.
Welcome, all of you, to this farewell, and I think I've called it the Farewell Gala for Human Resources Forums, and a way of honoring the forums and honoring REA and the amazing leadership he has shown over the 15 years that this organization's been in existence. I want to start with, first of all, just saying, I think this is a wonderful way for us to come together one last time and do all of this reconnection that we're going to have with each other. And I love the idea, and it was RA's idea, that what we really need to do is share what are some of our memorable moments that we experience as being part of the HR forums.
The thank yous can't be overdone. I've got to say thank you so much to you, Stephen, and thank you so much to you, Deborah. You know, when I let our advisory board know last June that I was going to phase myself out this year, everybody else on the board pretty much said, well, let's make it sort of a quiet and phase out of the HR forums. And I said, yeah, why make a lot of work? And Deborah said, no, we've got to have a party. And and I said, a party? It's a lot of work. And then she came back with Stephen. Stephen said, yeah, we're going to have a party at Juniper. And by that time, the party was underway. And thank you so much for making it physical here, where all of us can be together. So I want to just talk a little bit about the beginnings of this community and introduce a video of some of our members who are physically not here. And then we're going to hear from some of you who are here about memories of what this community's been about. In '91, I went to work, I left my jobs as a sales director in Silicon Valley, selling high-tech gear, and went to work for Tom Peters in the Tom Peters Group. We're in a recession. Used to mincing words, said to the gathered HR community, you guys are an expense center, and you're a cost center, and it's a recession. And unless you do something to change that, unless you can figure out how to become a profit center, your job may be history. And there was kind of an uproar in the room, and everybody had their own opinions about that. And there was it was almost a food fight. And Tom had some ideas that we would consider a little bit wacko today, but the question remained, how does HR shift what it does from being a cost center to being a profit center? And with people like Deborah and Stephen driving our conversations, it's not only become a profit center, but drive business results, drive profits and share price. And that's been one of the big themes since then. So we continued having these conversations, and by '98 I had left the Tom Peters Group. I was on my own, and we rounded up a group of some of the Silicon Valley HR leaders. And Deborah, you were there, and some of the people who were there in those days was Ken Alvarez from Sun, and Candice Malfit from Netscape, Barbara Beck from Cisco. Deborah Engel, you were part of that in the early days. You hosted one of our early meetings at 3Com, and the community formed. And one of my key learnings was a meeting we had at Sun. Ken Alvarez was going to be here, but at the last minute, he sent me an email this morning. I got 15 emails this morning. Ken's was the best excuse. I'm sorry I can't come. I'm in Hawaii. All right. But I was doing what I like to do, was to organize the conversation, right? And about 10 minutes into the conversation, there was bedlam. No one wanted to do what I wanted to do. And Ken said, Aryeh, why don't you just sit down? What we really want to do is talk to each other and learn from each other. And that was one of my big aha moments. Okay, fine. So all I have to do was sit here and have breakfast and listen to you guys talk to each other. And it kept happening. And the learning that happened wasn't because of anybody who organized it, really. I mean, we organized stuff, but it was because of the conversations that went on in the community. And one more theme from the Tom Peters group. I learned when I was in the Tom Peters group, and we were doing transformational leadership programs, that there was really a double agenda to what we were doing in the Tom Peters group in those days. One was the program, if it's going to be successful, you've got to drive business results, right? At the end of the day, you've got to find a way to drive business results. But that isn't why we were doing it. There was a second agenda. And the second bottom line was to quote something that, Stephen, that you were telling us about your motto here at Juniper, change the world. That was the second bottom line. Drive business results. If you drive business results, you get to change the world. And there was something about this community that we got to have both of those conversations in the same space.
My first connection to REA was actually trying not to connect with REA. I was getting emails and voicemails about, John, you really ought to join and try the HR forums. And I was at Wind River Systems at the time, and things were going pretty well, and we'd a competitor, and we were growing it organically, doubling in size, every year, and very focused on that. And it was like, okay, I don't have time for this. And then the recession hit. And it was like, oh, well, maybe I could learn something from somebody else. Let's see if somebody else can help me solve my problems for me. And went to the first HR Forums event. I think it was at Quadras, actually. And absolutely found it of great value. And everybody has used this word tonight so far, and I'll use it again, community. It was just such an incredible sense of community. I think HR Forums really forged an HR community here in the Bay Area. And that community is going to live on, but it is your legacy, REA. And it's not just a business community. There are personal friendships and relationships that all of us have formed that we are going to continue, that we're going to cherish, and we'll find a way to continue, hopefully on a group basis, but also on a point-to-point basis. And there's no greater legacy than that. And we learn from each other. I know I'm a much better, I think, not only HR person and business person, but a much better person as a result of REA, the HR Forum. So thank you.
I don't even remember how I became affiliated with the forums. It was such a long time ago, but I know that from the outset it was valuable. I have a couple of memorable moments, and one of them, of course, is every single one of our advisory board dinners, which I found myself looking forward to with such enthusiasm that all of us in the room know how difficult it is to keep something on your calendar when you believe that it is for your own benefit. I mean, we'll do everything for all of our constituents, but it's hard to take time. But I tried so hard never to miss those, because the privilege of being associated with the colleagues around the room was extraordinary, both for the passion that everyone brought, led by REA, in terms of helping the next generation of HR leadership develop. I mean, it was a passion that was real and tangible. And as I walked away from each of those dinners, I realized how incredibly important everyone on the advisory board committee had become to me, people who were not only my own mentors, but great friends. And so the joy for all of us during our very last advisory board meeting a month or so ago is the commitment we made to stay in touch with each other on a regular basis. My other memorable moment is that for so many of you, you remember Meg Whitman at the executive breakfast. My claim to fame is that I brought her there because I was her senior VP of Human Resources at the time. And I awakened that morning with 102 fever and thought, there is no way in hell I'm going to miss this. And so Meg and I were both at the front of the room going through conversations, and of course she is the most magnetic and charismatic person in the world, and people were dazzled by her. We had a full room, and at the very end she turned to me and said, with her mic still on, "Oh, that wasn't so bad."
mentoring is a key part of this, and I think the magic of what REA has created has been he created formats where we could mentor each other without even knowing it. And I know that as I look around the room at my colleagues at this table, my colleagues on the video, and others in the room, I can't tell you how much I've valued the time that you've spent with me, the discussions that we've had, the honest dialogue around the dinner table. And that has absolutely influenced me as a professional and given me an incredible desire to give back as well. So thank you, REA, for bringing everything you have to the role.
The most incisive questions. And he would pose that question, and all these people around the room would talk about the question. And then it happened. The question I never wanted to hear. And the question was, how does HR get a seat at the table? I thought I was going to pull my hair out. And I became really good friends with Jean Bourne, who we became instantaneous friends because she looked at me, I looked at her, and both of us wanted to run out of the room screaming because we were going to talk about how does HR get a seat at the table one more time. But here's the REA. That question is off. And I really attribute that to you, REA, in bringing a group of people together that could recreate, really grow a group of people that made a difference in the organization. To the bottom line, to shareholder value. And I really attribute that to the thoughtful discussions that we had at the HR Forum. One of my very, very memorable moments was with Jim Harrington. Eileen, I think you were there. Jim, I think you were also there. And it was at Xilinx. Oh my God, we had this really fiery discussion about they can't do that to us. It's the currency of Silicon Valley. How will we ever manage without it? Well, we did it. So to sum it all up, I just want to thank this very wise, gentle man for bringing thoughtful discussion to the HR arena. And cheers to you and to a wonderful retirement. Thank you, REA.
I think I joined the forum around 99 also. It was my second year as head of HR for SanDisk, and I was making it up as I went. I like grab a book, grab a friend, go to the forum, Didn't know how to do a lot of things and was doing things from scratch. So it was really a very important resource for someone in that position, me. And the other thing, of course, like all of you, forged some lifelong relationships now. In fact, I'll be back in New York visiting Eileen for food, wine, and shopping, not HR, next week. But anyway, really has been such an important part of forming up, who I am as a whole person, right? Because it takes kind of the whole thing. And for me, the community is, we're much like mayors of each little city, and we all kind of have the same problems of this mayoral responsibility. And it was uncanny to me how common our struggles and challenges were for being, undoubtedly because of the same industry in the same region and struggling through that. My most memorable moment actually was me and my big mouth. I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut, and REA is so patient and so humble, and just find the next question and the next question, the next question, kind of indulge the group wherever the group's energy was. There we would go. But the interesting thing that was happening, this was probably not that long ago, maybe 2 years ago. The next generation of HR leaders were still asking the question about getting to the table. And I think a lot of us feel maybe we fell short in bringing up the next generation, at least the depth and the volume of candidates that we have to pick from. And so our work is definitely not done. And we're saying, how do we get to the table? And I think I'd been hearing that for 20 years, and I stood up and said, why are we still asking that question after 20 years? And kind of was actually frustrated that let's stop talking about it and just assume the position, because a lot of it's confidence and just believing, that we could do that. And for many of us, that's kind of what it took. The conversation to kind of occur over and over again is not tiresome. It's what's needed to kind of help the next generation and kind of make sure that we are there for them. And that just brings me to just two last points. Necessary endings. Sometimes endings are just necessary, but the space always gets filled up by the next thing. And this reminds me a little bit about like when, if you're really in a church, it's not about the building and going to services on Sunday, it's about community. And no matter if the building burnt down or the, pastor moved on or whatever, church remains because the community remains. So my guess is, even though this is a necessary ending for REA to go do his next chapter, the church of the Human Resource Forum probably is going to continue. Last thing I want to say is I was a defector from high tech. I left, to go do Blue Shield for 10 years, which I've recently retired just three weeks ago. And REA let me stay in your club. Not only that, he let me be an honorary advisory member, so I was always very thankful for that. So thank you for all your years.
There's so many people in this room I know. I just absolutely love it. I returned to Radford in 2002, and the first thing I did was went to Deborah Engel and I said, I need to get involved with a great HR group. What do you recommend? And she goes, REA's formed. And so I went to the first meeting. It was great. I didn't realize Larry Butler was pushing me already. And I went up to REA and said, I want to be involved with this group. And he goes, will you be an advisory member? And I said, well, will you waive all the fees to the forum? And he goes, yes. And I said, good, you got a deal. The interesting thing is that REA and I are both very early people. We wake up very early. And so how many times did we have 7 o'clock calls in the morning? And he'd call up and go through this whole crazy idea. And at the end, he'd ask me what I would think. And sometimes I would just say, REA, it's crazy. And he goes, oh, really? The whole thing. And we got involved. But I realized he was also spending time writing a book. I'll talk about that in a minute. And the thing, though, that impressed me was I couldn't believe it. This guy could barely break even in a business. He had no HR experience. And he got all these incredible speakers to come to all these events and speak for absolutely free. I asked him, could you send me some names? He sent me 8 pages. I only printed out the first. But, Meg Whitman, Bill Krause, Eric Benamou, Bill Coleman, T.J. Rogers, Ned Barnhold, Kevin Kennedy, Bob Joss, we go on and on and on. And so one of the first things I learned was there was a certain type of executive that REA could really draw out. And these people came and really shared in a way that I'd never seen executives share before. And it was such a individual skill for REA. And we had such a great time because no matter what, you could always count on incredible dialogues, whether it was a small group or large, and so many different people in the room sharing. It was just great. So I can't, though, leave this discussion without talking about REA's secret life. You ready for this? Okay. My wife and I were invited to a book signing reading up at Kepler's in Menlo Park. Excuse me. Supposed to be working hard at the HR forums. He goes, I've been doing it for years, 2, 3, 4 hours a day. I go, okay, that I understand. And then, so he read from this book. You just sit in the room and he reads. And I go, wow, that's some pretty interesting stuff. I got to go buy the book. So the book is named Holy Beggars, A Journey from Haight Street to Jerusalem. Here's the tagline. The 1960s San Francisco spiritual revolution A View from the Inside. Now, I have to tell you, there is a lot more than just a spiritual revolution going on. This wasn't 50 Shades. REA was very, yes. It's amazing how many of you immediately recognize the reference. He wrote it very well, but in between the lines, I was becoming jealous reading this book. In between the lines, you could tell there was a lot going on. And then I saw a picture of him, because he put a few pictures in there. He was one of the lead musicians. Who was your head honcho? What was his name? Yes. And the family didn't appreciate some of the things you said it too, because it was pretty exciting stuff. So he's sitting, playing, full head of hair, very impressive. And all these hippie girls are looking up at him. And I couldn't tell if it was love or lust, but they were all kind of starry-eyed. And here he's in the middle playing, and he's got this big picture, and I'm going, what a life. You have to tip your hat to the guy, because he's done something that I don't think any of the rest of us have ever achieved. So my congratulations, Ari.
You create a safe environment for Has to have those dialogues to solve real problems. Keyword is safe. Provocative? My God, I thought you were Alex Trebek up there half the time. I couldn't figure out the question, let alone the answer. When he's talking in 5-syllable words, I go, I got to divert to Peg. But you really forced us to really think in 3 dimensions in solving problems. Innovative, I think you drove a lot of innovation just by your facilitation. And lastly, you created a lot of friends, and that's all I want to say. So thank you very much, Ari, for doing this forum. Thank you.
Its legacy is going to last for a very, very long time in our lives and lives of other future HR leaders, and thank you.
I was sending an email to a friend today who was asking me what's happening, and I said, there's a part of me that I feel like sort of hiding in the corner and saying, who is this for? Who are they talking about? I just want to really thank you, thanks everybody for this gathering. We had a chance to learn together, all of us. We had a chance to have that, to share that experience where, you want me to be there, but what's that? Oh. We had a chance to share that experience where the bigger picture that came out of the community being together had more wisdom, had more understanding than any one of us as individuals could have brought. A lot of times in the middle of the 15 years when we were getting together, people would ask me, well, what's your goal for this meeting? My goal was always that we're going to walk out of the room, each of us, with a bigger picture of the universe that we operate in than we had when we walked in the door a couple hours ago. And because of all of the leadership and the intelligence and the heart and the commitment that everyone here brought to the conversation, we all got to share that experience. So people have been asking me, so what are you doing next? Are you going to retire? I love it when somebody says, am I going to retire? Because I banished that word from my vocabulary. So, my explanation, let's see, where do I have it? I know I have it here somewhere. Oh, yeah. So my explanation of what I'm doing is that I'm doing what I've always done, what I've kind of been compulsive about, which is bringing people together to talk to each other. When we've all talked to each other as an HR community in the Bay Area and specifically in Silicon Valley, in my mind, there's always been that double bottom line. Make a difference for the success of each of your organizations, and then make a difference in a larger sense for the world. Now that I'm out of the earning money years of my life, I get to have more of a single bottom line. Just make a difference for the world. One of the things that set me off on this was a couple sessions we had with Bob Johansen, one of the co-founders of Institute for the Future. Were any of you at any of those sessions with Bob? There was one in particular. Last year he was talking about the 10-year forecast that the Institute for the Future does. He was talking about the year 2022. And he said, he's been doing this stuff all his life. And he said, this is the scariest 10-year forecast I've ever done. And I also feel the most optimistic. And I said, why the scariest? And he said, in 2022, all of our data and research shows that there'll be about 9 billion people on the planet, and close to a third of them, close to 3 billion human beings, are not going to have adequate housing, food, shelter, medical care, and they're going to be disconnected from their societies. And the fact of that is going to drive, and he said one other little fact. They're all going to be connected to the internet. They're all going to have some sort of device, and they'll be connected to the internet. The fact of that is going to drive global instability on an increasing scale. If anyone is waiting for things to sort of quiet down a bit, according to Bob, it ain't going to happen. It's going to keep getting more unstable. And I said, so why are you most optimistic? And he said, because everybody else is also going to be connected. And people everywhere are going to be doing things on a level of global reach and massive effects. Massive numbers of people are going to be able to address the world's problems of climate change, of hunger, of disease, of you name it. So we held those shared visions, and I kind of took that in, and I thought, okay, what am I going to do after I've done the HR forums? Well, what am I good at? The main thing I'm good at is bringing people together to talk to each other. And the idea occurred to me, maybe some of those 6 billion people who are connected and doing things in a way that wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago, maybe we can all start talking to each other. People everywhere who are dealing with homelessness, who are dealing with hunger, who are dealing with health in creative and innovative ways that get around governments, get around corporate institutions, are making a difference in the world. I could give a 5-hour speech right now with examples. What if we got together and created ways for people to talk to each other and support each other and form community with similar kinds of effect that we've all experienced here, having community with each other? So I'm launched. I've been preparing now for a few months, and starting tomorrow morning, I'm going full steam ahead. There are some people who I greatly respect who have already agreed to be part of it. Deborah Engel, thank you for agreeing to be part of this as a global citizen. Bob Johansen is part of us as a guiding founder. Larry Butler, who'd been at PeopleSoft, is part of the Working Founder Group, the group of people that's actually going to roll up our sleeves on a volunteer basis and create the infrastructure and make stuff happen. So it's all sorts of great people that are starting to sign up, and I'm very excited. And if this particular thing draws any of you, the thing about One World Lights is, as much as I can keep it off of the cash grid, there's no money involved. And there's nothing involved in, sign up for an ideology or a viewpoint or somebody's viewpoints. It's just do what you're already doing and reach out and support others who are doing the same. If any of you have any interest in this, if you go to the HR Forums website, starting tomorrow afternoon, there'll be links to get involved and sign up, or just email me. There's one other thing that I'm going to be doing. A number of you have said, it would be really cool to keep getting together in kind of a small group basis for some of those dinners. The advisory board, we've all decided we're just going to have dinner together and keep doing it because there's such friendship. And there are some others among you who have said, you know, it would be very cool to get together for dinners with HR people, but also other people who have leadership roles in their organizations, to talk about the common things that we have as leaders. You know, if you depend on other people's work to get stuff done in an organization, there's a lot of common ground there. So we're going to have some of those too. So if you're interested in those, let me know. Okay, the last thing I want to say, you know, some of you have mentioned legacy, and everybody's saying, oh, Arya, you know, you're going to have a legacy. What's your legacy? And I've been thinking here, you know, based on what all of you have said, and some of our folks on Skype have said, the legacy that I think we all have together in common is community, and the friendships and connection and learning. But not only that, the sort of habits, you know. If I have the habit of being on my own, I'm competing with everybody to some extent. If I have the habit of being in community, I know what happens when we share learning together, when we share support. That's one of the legacies that we have as community. I think there's a second legacy that we have, and I don't know if all of you would agree with me, but for me it's been very much, it's that double bottom line. On the one hand, make a difference in your work, in your organization, and the success of whoever it is you're connected with. And the second is make a difference in the world, change the world. And we've shared that double bottom line with each other. And once you've had that experience, it doesn't go away, it doesn't disappear. It's going to inform all of us in our lives. I have to share something, a conversation Lisa and I had. You know, Lisa was one of the VPs at HP, and she and I were talking. And I was fascinated because Lisa had started off in the Philippines in relatively modest beginnings and had worked her way up to a level of great success in what she was doing at HP. And you were spending some of your time running a non-profit organization, OICW, which was working with at-risk youth in East Palo Alto to help them sort of learn how to enter the workforce. And I said, you know, why are you spending all this time on this? Don't you have don't you have some goals that you have, business goals that you have to meet? And isn't that pretty consuming? And the answer that Lisa gave to me was, you know, when I reached the end of my life and they asked me, what was your life about? I want to be able to say something more than I helped a big company make a little more money. I mean, that's not bad, but I want to be able to say something more than that. That's also part of our legacy as a community. Yeah, we help our organizations be successful. And yeah, we also do a little something more than that to help change the world. The final piece that I want to say, several of you have alluded to it as well as Eddie, is mentoring the next generation. We have had a mentor program, and I think it's been one of the most satisfying, for me, satisfying things that we've done. And some of the people who've been involved, there's Eileen, and there's Deborah, and there's Stephen, and there is Peg, and who else have been some of the mentors? Did I leave anybody out here? Rocky. Greg. You know, imagine if you had to pay these folks, you know, on an hourly scale to sit down in this program. It would be unaffordable. They volunteered their time because mentoring really makes a difference. That's how we pass it on. That's how we pass on the knowledge of how to make a difference and the double bottom line as well. So that's our legacy, all of us, is community, is the double bottom line, and is passing it on to the next generation. So let's not stop now. Let's keep it going.